Welcome again to another episode of Wisdom Personified. I'm so excited today. I'll be talking to Dr. Ngao Motsei. She's a seasoned executive and board member and lecturer as well. And with all those hats, it's going to be very exciting to learn a lot of wisdom from her. Dr. Motsei, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much.
So much for giving up your time to speak to us.
No, it's only a pleasure, and thanks for having me.
And we've come to the end of the year. How has your year been?
My year has actually been very interesting. I mean, it started out in January. I started new things. I ventured into another portion of the life that I've envisaged for myself. So I had no idea how it was going to go out, but so far so good.
Great. I'm just thinking of your life and thinking of what kept you occupied as a child. Because you come across as quite playful but serious. And I'm like thinking, as a child, what were you like?
Very playful. so that hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Very playful. I've got fond memories of my childhood, and part of it being active at school and doing sport and essentially being just a child. Yeah. I mean, going to school, come back and play and doing whatever needs playing, and once in a while getting into trouble because I've always kind of pushed the boundaries or questioned why we have to do things, you know.
Which is a good mindset to have.
Yeah, I suppose it has served me.
Except for the adults who have to discipline you. That's the problem. Yeah. And you love golf.
I do.
Gosh, you do love your golf, I must just say.
I do love my golf. I have to say that it's actually been interesting because, I mean, I've had clubs, you know, that stayed in my garage for 10 years, and I just never played because it's almost like I had to go through a mind shift about golf, because at the time I felt, golf is such a bougie thing, and it's almost like for black people, you've arrived and I'm not going to go there.
You're not going to be the stereotype of arrived.
I'm not going to be the stereotype of arrived. And then what happened is I was a student, I did my PhD and disappeared completely out of life, and people, you know, stopped inviting me because I turned them down. And when I finished, I had nobody. It's almost like I have to start afresh. And at the time, and then somebody said, come, let's go play. And I was like, okay, maybe I should. Yeah. And as they say, you know, the rest is history.
I know, because I follow your profiles and you love your golf. Anyway, what's the vision you had for your life growing up? And the life you're living now, has it lived up to that vision?
Do you know what? I cannot actually say that I had a vision for myself, because all I did, I remember I'm one of those people that had no idea, that did not have a clue what I want to do, because you have, you know, two types of people. Yeah. Some people know immediately that this is what I love, this is what I want to do.
Not all of us are like that.
And I had no clue what it is that I wanted to do, All I did was just go to school, and my parents used to say, whatever, it doesn't matter if you don't know what you want to do, just go and, you know, study that education. Yeah. But it was interesting in the township that I grew up in.
Which was?
You know, I grew up in different places. Mabopane, basically. I'm a Pretoria girl. Yeah. And I remember there was one lady who was a social worker, and but what struck me was he drove a GG, a Foxy, you know, back here, and I thought, oh my God, what does she do? I want to do that because I want to drive the GG Foxy.
Oh my God,
and I ended up doing my first degree doing social sciences, and after that I'm like, no, this doesn't sound like it. So I continued and I continued. It's almost like every cycle, 3 or 4 year cycle. No, surely there's got to be more to it. And I ended up doing different things until, you know, from town planning. My master's degree was in town planning. And after town planning, I then went into strategy. I know you're a strategy person. And it started to feel right. Yeah. It started to feel right for me. Yeah. And that's almost like the trajectory I've followed since then. strategy, leadership, very passionate about that.
Thinking about the first time I met you, you were at one of our listed financial services company.
Yes.
And I remember thinking, I wonder what's her unique value proposition. You really held your ground, you really held your space, which is something rare. You know, a lot of black executives are in positions, but you don't really feel their gravitas. What do you think your unique value proposition is?
I would say my unique value proposition is exactly what I said, because I had different experiences, and over time also I want to believe gathered different expertise. So I was not your one channel kind of person. I mean, at the time we met, I was the HR director, and yet I did not come from an HR background.
Yes. But you like owned it. You know, nobody would have said this is not what you trained for.
I was a town planner, but how I prior to that, through my strategy consulting, and in my strategy consulting, I worked a lot with executive teams, and I don't know, by default or not default, or by design or not by design, I ended up working a lot with heads of HR. And I remember thinking to myself that, you know, I wonder how these guys that I'm working with, how much value they could add, you know, as HR from the people side of strategy, if they actually took time to actually understand the business, the businesses they were in. Yeah. And I remember, you know, after working with a few companies and a few of the excos and a few of the HR heads, deciding and saying to myself, you know, if I was to be an HR head, I would do HR differently. And as they say, careful what you wish for. You might just get it, and that opportunity came. And I want to believe that, you know, the impact that I was able to have with obviously not just myself, I had a very good team of people, was first of all my understanding of strategy and my different kind of thinking, which I brought into the role at the time.
Remember, we could have just never met after that. It makes a difference. The impact a person makes, it's lasting.
Yeah.
And I had a leadership development program, and you were one of the first people I called to please be part of it. So whatever you're doing it correctly.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. You did your PhD, and your thesis was called Perceptions of Bullying and Organizational Antecedents in the South African Workplace, which is an interesting topic. What wisdom did you get about human beings when you did that?
In everything that I do, and it's almost like there's a story behind it. And I was, at the time, I was in one of the biggest bank in the country, and my experiences there, unfortunately, they were not very great with my line manager. And I remember going home on one Friday and sitting there after a particularly bad day, and I sat down and I think I typed something on, and boom, what came to me was that this thing that is actually going on has a name, and it's called workplace bullying. Wow. And
you will think it's in the playground only.
You only think, you know, especially in South Africa, because there isn't, you know, too much research done in the world of bullying at work. So at the time, and I was thinking of doing a PhD, and it immediately was like, this is what I want to do. And because essentially I felt that, you know, as and when I get into that high leadership position, this is not the way I want to lead. And the more I read and I started making myself, you know, knowledgeable around this subject, I also realized that most of the research was done in the West, and it was mainly interpersonal. So I wanted to look at bullying from an organizational point of view, hence the antecedents of you know, organizational antecedents into bullying. So that's what led me to that. And the findings were unfortunately not very pleasing. There's a lot of bullying in our workplaces in South Africa, and people don't even know it, don't know what is going on. There's a lot of, unfortunately, I'm you know, sad to say that there's a lot of pain and toxicity that's going on in organizations. And but it also gave rise to my BHAG, Big Hairy Audacious Goal, which is to bring back humanity into organizations. So my work in organizations is also informed by bringing back humanity back into organizations.
Isn't that unfortunate that as adults we will have such a life?
No, it is. It is unfortunate, but it's also a reality. And of course, it's not just a South African phenomenon. I mean, everywhere, organizations, especially now, the times that we live in, more and more people are meant to do more with less.
Yes.
And the economic environment is not helping. And there's a whole lot of things that's at play in organization. People jostling for positions, and once you reach those positions, doing everything you can to hold on to it, and not necessarily lifting others up, and forgetting that as leaders we've got shadows. Our shadows cast in the direct environment within which we operate.
What book have you read this year? And what impression?
What books?
Yes.
How many books?
Well, the one book that you would like to share with us that really left a good impression.
Okay. Can I do two? Can I break the rules?
I mean, you really have to.
Okay, so the one book was PortfolioLife, and it's really written by David Corbett, and I think the whole thing is about how to lead a life of purpose after 50.
Hopefully we start doing it before 50.
No, we do. Yeah. I mean, some of us have started doing it before 50 because that's why I always started and say, surely there should be more to what I'm doing. And I've kind of always believed in the world of and. Doing this and not doing either this or that. So that kind of, I was quite happy because it kind of shaped, confirmed to me that what I've always been thinking about actually does exist. Yes. And there's a name for it called PortfolioLife. The second book is called Traversing the Avalanche. And essentially it's in the space of governance. And it's more around how to use governance to propel or to support SMEs and private companies into growth and sustainability.
And people do misunderstand what governance is, isn't it? They do. Because they always think it's just the check box. Yeah. It is strategy, essentially. If you do strategy effectively, you are also good at governance. Yeah. Your title is called Chief Portfolio Life Officer.
Isn't it catchy?
And your company is called MyPortfolioLife.
Yes.
And it helps individuals to identify post-career portfolio of activities in line with their life goals.
Yes.
What wisdom informed this formation of this company, and what have you learned about human beings since?
The wisdom that informed it was it links to what I said earlier about wanting to live in the world of and. Yeah. But the other thing is that, when you look back over our years, we have done so many things. We have so many expertise. We gathered so many expertise. We've got different passion. Why not form that into what you do? So essentially, in essence, the concept of life portfolio is borrowed from the financial services, with money, because, when you do investments, they call it portfolio. And my thinking and my sense was, why don't we also, give it the entire, complete the portfolio by looking at life. And what I mean by that is based on all the things that we've done in life, all our experiences. You segment your life in terms of categories of or portfolios of things that you do for money, vocational, that you do things that you do for the love of it, recreational, like in my case golf, but also things that you give him back. the kind of things that you give back. But one of the things that actually propelled or helped me to shape this was that in doing the work that I do, consulting work that I do with executives, is I'm finding that some of the colleagues, the executives that I'm talking to, who are either post 50 or are getting closer to retirement, have no idea what to do, what they're going to do beyond that. So part of it was, so my engagement with them has always been, for example, what are some of the things that you wanted to do which you never got around to doing because of your career, of the demands of your work.
Don't want to regret that, huh?
Yeah.
What's the most courageous decisions you've ever taken as a leader? And what motivated you to do that?
Maybe to other people may be courageous. For me, what is courageous?
Yeah.
What is, because what's courageous to me,
Yes,
the definition of it may not be. But I mean, one of the things I've always, after many years serving in, working in corporate, and after being an executive in corporate, I always knew that I was not going to retire in corporate. So the long story short, one of the courageous things that I did, I suppose, is actually deciding, this is it. I'm just going to leave the comfort of the high salary and the benefits and the title to actually go and do what I believe I was meant to do. But at the same time, I'm also very grateful that I've had the experience and that I have garnered in corporate to enable me to actually take that leap of faith. Except this time around, and it was not even the first time, because I've left my job many a times, maybe twice before, but I think this time I was a little bit more prepared and knew what I really wanted to do. Even though, but you can never really be prepared because you never know what you're stepping into. What is different though is that even with the challenges and of being an entrepreneur or doing your own work, your own thing, it's so fulfilling.
Yeah. You are very much involved in change management and transformation portfolios when you are an executive. What do you think is holding back our business leaders in terms of embracing transformation? Why is our pace of transformation so slow in South Africa, especially in the private sector?
Look, I mean, I'm not in anybody's head, so I wouldn't know what really is. But my view, having been, is that one of the things that we're not doing well, especially in boardrooms and in executives, is succession. Talk about succession. So what happens is most of the time, we never really had a good leadership bench or for somebody to take over. So what happens? So then what happens is the default is when one, for example, if a black executive goes away, then there's always this narrative or question of, well, there's nobody else to take over. But I think that's the one thing, succession. But the other thing is that it's probably also the way we position and talk about transformation. We talk about and position it, or in many instances, organizations take it. It's almost like it polarizes, and I believe that, you and I from strategy, we don't talk about it more, aligning it more as a strategic imperative of the business. So one of the things then is that, it's almost like, the consequence is that it gets looked at as somebody else's responsibility and not everybody embracing it. And a grudge. It's almost like a grudge purchase until, you get, people's, it's almost like your hand become twisted and they do it as a grudge. But I think we could do better in executive committees and in boards to actually, because talent is one of a very, very key agenda.
Who is our most important asset?
Yes, we always say that those are important asset is people, yet we don't, is more often than not, we don't back that up. I have to say though that it's not all doom and gloom. There has been strides that have been, made. At the same time, it's almost like it's a polarity. We've also seen in recent times, it's almost like we've actually gone backwards. In some of, especially, in some of the sectors where, when you look at the leadership and the exco management, senior management, we've actually gone backwards. But that's also because I think, we do not have succession.
We usually say the fish rots from the head. Do you buy into that? And do you believe that just because our leader is in a particular kind of character that it gives us license to be like that as well?
Well, yes and no. Many years ago there was the concept of followership, which I'll come back to it. But yes, in the sense that I talked earlier about, the shadow of leaders, leadership shadow. When you're a leader, how you show up and how you lead actually does have a direct impact on your direct environment, because often as leaders it's not so much what we say, it's what we do. People watch what we do, and this is where I think the phrase "the fish rots from the head" actually makes sense and fits. At the same time, I also feel that if you have strong followership, and we often think of followers as people who are meek, who just follow, but good followership are people also that understand that they have a right to put that leader in there, and if they have, or they have a choice, to follow or not to follow. Yeah. And good leaders also are good followers, because as a good leader, you should know, your role is to provide good strategic advice and direction and get off the way, and when to lead and when to be a follower, because by its very nature, leaders, we lead and manage people. We often talk about knowledge, what do we call it? Knowledge workers. Yes. And knowledge workers, by its very being, is that they know more than us, and they think they have a brain. So it's also, as good leadership is knowing when to step back and let somebody that actually knows and is better, equipped and better prepared for the current context to actually lead.
I was once facilitating a strategy session, and there was a difficult board member. There are those people who talk a lot in meetings, and everybody tends to just give them the airtime. Yeah. So I then said to him, are you aware that to be a good leader, you also need to be a good follower? Yeah. The entire room just went dead, because they're like, at the end, they're like, thank you. We've always wanted to tell him that, but we never had the courage. Yeah. There are some traits as human beings, and I'm going to talk in the context of being a leader, behavior traits that we sometimes exhibit, which kind of trip us up. Which one would you want to highlight that as aspirant leaders we must guard against? Whether it's a behavior or a trait that we must look into and say, hey, I must be aware that this will trip me up.
First of all, my thing about leadership is an expression of who we are. So if who you are is understanding that you are because of others, you're going to lead in that way. And if who you are, or the way you have, whatever environment has shaped you to believe that leadership is about position, and therefore if you're in the position, you have every right to do as we wish without necessarily thinking too much about what your impact is, those are the things that trip people, and we often term those kinds of leaders as positional leaders, because it's more around how they do and what they do is informed very much by the position that they occupy. Yeah. So what happens when that position is not there? So does it mean they cease to be leaders? Yeah. Whereas in my own phrase of leadership is an expression of who you are, you can lead without a position.
Precisely. I just had a presentation, I think 2 days ago, and my topic was, I am my own best leader. Because ultimately, if you don't see yourself as a leader, first of yourself, how dare you ask us to give you the privilege of leading the rest of us? So it was an interesting reaction that I got to it. Yeah. Which leader, dead or alive, in the business world do you admire, and what about that person inspires you?
Do you know what? I've actually, as you asking this, I'm asking myself, it's almost like a very difficult question. Oh. I never thought, such a question would be a difficult one to answer. But the first person that comes to mind is Lulu Gwagwa. Mm. Lulu is, I met her when she was the CEO of one of the state-owned enterprise, and she recruited me. And I mean, one of the things that I love about her is her support of others and her support of other women from many, many years back then. So there was this whole thing, pull her Down syndrome. And when I worked with her, all I heard from her was support. Yeah. And then she stepped into business, and she continues to do that. She continues to support others, and she does that quietly. Yes. Without
Isn't that intoxicating?
Without
when people are
even
so powerful
standing
in
on,
quiet ways.
And she's very small. Yes. And when she comes in the room, it's, I think she epitomizes what they call, dynamics come in small packages. But more than anything, the trait that I love really, really about her is just going about doing great work and quietly.
Yeah. We don't need all the bells and whistles. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I have learned from her, and I'll continue to learn. And I think without even knowing it is, it's almost like modeling my behavior. Yeah. It has shaped how, the leader that I am, and I'm constantly becoming. Yeah. And the business person that I'm also, aspiring to be. Yeah.
And you're an inspiration to us, because you also do your things quietly, but we're observing. Is there something you want to share, your last words of wisdom that you want to share that we haven't covered so far?
I think a lot of it is similar. Maybe it ties to the last point that I made. I mean, whatever you do, as long as your heart is in it, and you love what you're doing, and you're doing it for the right reasons, do it without expecting anything in return.
But we do like the glory, isn't it? What's wrong with the glory?
I don't know. I don't know. You don't have to seek the glory. Because there are so many examples all over where with people doing good work and not seeking glory. Yeah. And glory coming to them, and they still continue to run away from it. But you cannot dim a light when it's shining on top of you. Yeah.
And that's your legacy, ultimately, isn't it?
No, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. And join us again next time when we speak to another amazing human being. This is Wisdom Personified, Conversations with Dudu Msomi.